Oh no, whatever will we do? We are about to be exposed and get nerfed because of it. This is the feeling that some players of a certain spec have been pointing out as soon as we have gotten this announcement from the gals and guys over at Warcraftlogs. Because one of the new shiny things that is currently in development over at Warcraftlogs is an extra feature in your logs to be able to see the performance of your players, or rather just the effectiveness of certain spells, certain abilities or talents for your characters. What I am talking about is when we go through the rankings of Warcraftlogs, let's just stay in the raid for now, but this is something that is relevant for Mythic Plus as well, not just the raid. And we look at some of the performances. Let's pick a pretty difficult boss, even after the nerfs, is still quite a challenging one like Smolderun. We can pick a random guy over here, and we can go over the healing. Now, this is the healing, okay? Let's not judge any of the players in here. What we can look at, though, from the healing done is that now, besides the healing, which is, showing every type of heal, and the absorbs, which of course show you all the different kind of absorb spells used by the players, there is a brand new addition to this list: mitigations. This is a new type of added tracking metric on Warcraftlogs, which allows you to see what exactly does damage reduction do in terms of actual healing. Obviously, in this case, it would be in terms of damage prevented, damage reduced. For example, you could see something like Thick Hide, as simple as a talent reducing damage taken. Now you would have the idea of how much damage it reduced. You can also see the effectiveness of your defensive cooldown. For example, using something like Astral Shift, you get to see just how much damage Astral Shift prevented. You then also have some pretty cool things, like being able to tell how much your cooldowns can do. For example, Power Word Barrier. You can see, for example, this Priest's Barrier is preventing 2 million damage, while this Priest's Barrier is preventing 11 million damage. However, of course, the main point of this new feature is to get up to the Holy Paladin with Devotion Aura. So that's the main take of this new tracking system on Warcraftlogs. The fact that now you have a much better way of actually visualizing how powerful something like Devotion Aura can be. This, of course, has been a point of contention when it comes to the healing meters, because of course when you add the mitigation, the Holy Paladin in the rankings jumps up from 255 all the way up to 322,000 HPS. It's a 70,000 HPS jump. They are effectively healing, or showing up to be healing, something like 40% more than they wouldn't have without the Devotion Aura being visible. And of course, the Discipline Priest also gets a few more HPS because of things like Barrier. This is consistent, of course, with multiple other bosses. We can just move over to a different one, to Tindral. You can see once more you have the healing. Now you can just get rid of these, only look at mitigation. Once more, you have 80,000 HPS gained by the Holy Paladin because of the value of Devotion Aura, and about 30 to 20 for the Discipline Priests. So the finished version would look like this. Mega gap of the Holy Paladin, which is 75,000 HPS ahead of the Discipline Priest. When you take this out, of course, it is much more average. Then also you have to mention the damage, the damage done, so to speak, to the specs that don't really have mitigation, damage reduction. The Evoker goes much lower because the way in which an Evoker heals is mostly just straight healing without much of any damage reduction. So that is the point for today about the effect that this new tool might have on the perception of the power of the specs. I said it's not just relevant in the raid, it might also be relevant in Mythic Plus, not just because of the healers, but also because of the value of the defensives of certain DPS specs, for example. This could also be valuable when you're checking your own raid logs, for example, to see how effective certain players can be with their defensives. Because up to now, when you are, for example, in the raid or even in Mythic Plus, the one question is, did the player use a defensive if the player died or if the player was taking a lot of damage. The one question is, did he press the defensive? However, with this new tool, you don't just get to see if the defensive was being pressed, but you can also get to see just how much did the defensive do in terms of value, in terms of how much damage you actually prevented. A good example could be the Preservation Evoker absorbing or preventing about 1 million damage with Obsidian Scales and 4 uses, and then you have the Augmentation Evoker absorbing almost twice as much, 2 million damage, preventing twice as much with 50% more uses of the defensive. So it's not just to check up on the performance and the extra value of this mitigation tool for the healers, but also for the DPS specs and partially even for the tanks as well. Now, there is something to be mentioned first, back to the original point of Holy Paladins crying about being outed for their hidden power that gets seldom mentioned. Players sort of just forget, or we should say give for granted, how powerful Devotion Aura is. After all, that is one of the main reasons why one Paladin was being brought in every single raid for years, for, maybe even decades in this game, because of the value of the damage reduction of Devotion Aura. However, you also have to point out a couple of things here. Do not have those people run immediately into Doomer mode. For now, at least for now, mitigation is not actually going to be showing up on, for example, the rankings. So if we go in the healer rankings, you still don't have a way to show up the mitigation. Even in here, there is no healing plus mitigation ranking. There is no option to add mitigation. For example, in here, an extra added option include mitigation healing. For now, there is none. So you still can't show up in the meters with the added healing of the mitigation. And number two, it's not enabled by default anyways. So even if we sift through these logs and we pick, for example, this guy on Smolderon and we check the healing, it will be automatically disabled. You have to manually pick that up yourself to be able to see the mitigation healing. That is the other point right now about this feature. Now, some players, of course, have continued their Doomer trend by saying yes, but that is just for now. That is just because this is still under construction, it's still being developed. Just a few days ago, this was even more broken. For example, the healing of the Devotion Aura wasn't even being properly shown in the mitigation. Now it's much more effective in showing the actual damage reduced of Devotion Aura. For example, here you have a 20 million damage reduced in Devotion Aura, if you look at the damage taken. So 3% of 650 is 19.5. So again, now it's much more accurate in calculating the damage reduced, damage prevented of certain abilities, but it's taking time, of course, to fully get this to work properly. The fear, as I said, the doom mongering of certain players, most of them likely being of the Holy Paladin genre, is that eventually this will be introduced, this will be included in the default healing, it will be included in the default rankings, and what this will cause, of course, is a massive spike in performance shown for a Holy Paladin. Because of course, if we go back, instead of looking at the individual results and we just look at the statistics for healers right now, Holy Paladin, as usual, continues to be trending towards the average, towards the middle. Even if we don't look at the absolute top, you look at the average over here, the average is in this quadrant, in the middle quadrant as a Holy Paladin. And that's without showing up the value of Devotion Aura. So if you added, obviously, Devotion Aura to be visible in here, Holy Paladin would just skyrocket all the way at the top. That is the fear some players are having right now about the value that is now being shown to everyone about the actual true HPS gain of these Paladins with Devotion Aura, giving you somewhere in the realm of 60 to 80 again, 1000 HPS. That you always had, that was always there, everybody was aware that this existed, but now it is being shown. It is being put visible for everyone to realize the power of this ability for a Holy Paladin, for example. That is the main argument of today, the introduction of the mitigations tab in the healing meters, the healing done of Warcraftlogs. How will this be fully introduced by the time it's fully developed? If it's going to be made part of all of the healing logs at all times automatically being shown, if it's not, if it's going to be introduced in the rankings of the specs, and if there's going to be split, much like we have seen the splits about PI, for example. We might be seeing also a split about having or not having mitigation being shown. That is the question, and also the possible question that will be thrown over at Blizzard, because you can tell that if this is to made visible at all times, then the population, the general community, will start responding with requests of massive nerfs to the Holy Paladin, because now their power is significantly spiked. Their power now is shown. It was always there, but now it's shown to players way more clearly. So there might be a risk of Blizzard wanting to address this problem, for example. So we will see later down the line of the development of this tool, as well as the response from the community and perhaps the response from Blizzard themselves. How will this end up playing out when it comes to displaying the effect, the power of mitigation tools, from passive damage reduction in your talents to active defensives that you are using, or to actual healing mechanics that grant damage prevented, which doesn't show up in the meters. We will see the development of it down the line, but for today, on this cheerful holiday reset day, at least in EU, we are now leaving each other once more. Thanks, of course, as usual, to all of the Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help to the growth of the channel, which can, of course, as usual, still be given completely for free. You can like and comment down below, as well as subscribe to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, my sore throat is causing quite some damage. It's logging in the blue to purple percentages right now. I think with a better rotation, it might even enter orange logging.